Top 10 Golden Age Womanizers. In Hollywood's Golden Age, what happened on screen was only half the story. Behind the cameras, leading men lived lives that would make today's celebrities blush. These weren't just occasional affairs. They were legendary romantic careers that studio publicists worked overtime to conceal. Today, we're counting down the 10 most notorious womanizers of classic Hollywood. Men whose love lives were as dramatic as any film they ever starred in. From yacht parties to secret children, from multiple marriages to thousands of conquests, these are the true stories that the studio system never wanted you to know.
Reality, and I think a kind of a intermingling of sexual and political hypocrisy.
10. Warren Beatty. While Warren Beatty bridges the gap between old Hollywood and the new Hollywood era, his reputation as a ladies' man firmly places him in the tradition of Golden Age womanizers. Before settling down with Annette Bening in 1992, Beatty's list of romantic conquests read like a who's who of Hollywood royalty. The handsome star of Bonnie and Clyde and Shampoo was linked to nearly every famous actress of his era: Natalie Wood, Julie Christie, Diane Keaton, Madonna, and dozens more. His charm was legendary, his technique apparently flawless. As actress Joan Collins once said, "He exhausted me. He was insatiable." What makes Beatty particularly noteworthy isn't just the quality of his romantic partners, but the sheer quantity. His biographer Peter Biskin famously calculated that Beatty had slept with nearly 12,775 women, a number that, while likely exaggerated, reflected his status as Hollywood's premier bachelor for decades. Director and friend James Toback explained Beatty's appeal. His combination of control and creativity was unique. He always gave women the sense that he was completely focused on them. What's remarkable is that despite his prolific dating history, Beatty has maintained friendly relationships with many of his ex-partners. When he finally married Annette Bening in 1992, Hollywood was shocked. Not that he had married a beautiful actress, but that at age 54, the industry's most committed bachelor had actually committed. Beatty, ever discreet about his past, has said little about his legendary status, preferring to let the whispers and rumors speak for themselves. But in Hollywood, actions spoke louder than words, and Beatty's actions created a legend that few could match.
The day is gone and all its sweets are gone. Sweet voice, sweet lips, soft hand and softer breast.
9. Tyrone Power. With his perfect features and magnetic screen presence, Tyrone Power was often cited as the most beautiful man in Hollywood during the 1930s and 1940s. As the star of swashbuckling adventures like The Mark of Zorro and romantic dramas like The Razor's Edge, Power's appeal to women was immediate and overwhelming. He used his extraordinary looks to full advantage. Despite 3 marriages, to French actress Annabella, Mexican actress Linda Christian, and Debbie Ann Menardos, Power was notorious for his many affairs with his co-stars and other Hollywood beauties. His relationship with Lana Turner was particularly intense. After meeting on the set of The Rains Came, they began a passionate affair that Turner later described as all-consuming. When Power refused to leave his first wife to marry Turner, she reportedly suffered an emotional breakdown. Other notable conquests included Judy Garland, Mai Zetterling, and Anita Ekberg. Power's appeal crossed all boundaries. He was as popular with studio secretaries as with his famous co-stars. What made Power unique among Hollywood womanizers was the emotional intensity he brought to his affairs. These weren't just casual flings, but passionate, all-consuming relationships, at least from the women's perspective. Power had a gift for making each woman feel like she was the only one who truly understood him, a talent that left a trail of broken hearts across Hollywood. His untimely death at age 44 from a heart attack while filming Solomon and Sheba in Madrid cut short what had been an extraordinary romantic career. But in his brief life, Power had lived up to his name, wielding an almost irresistible power over the women who crossed his path.
I was in Canada with Catherine Cornell, and I was in Eagle Rampant with Tallulah.
8. Marlon Brando. When Marlon Brando burst onto screens in A Streetcar Named Desire in 1951, he brought a raw animal sexuality that changed American acting forever. That same primal energy fueled a personal life of epic proportions and boundary-breaking complexity. Brando had 3 official wives, Anna Kashfi, Movita Castaneda, and Tarita Teripaya, but his actual romantic life extended far beyond marriage. He fathered at least 11 children with multiple women, many of whom he maintained relationships with simultaneously. What set Brando apart from other Hollywood womanizers was his complete disregard for convention. At a time when even the hint of bisexuality could destroy a career, Brando was openly fluid in his sexuality, having affairs with men as well as women. When asked directly about his sexual orientation, Brando famously replied, "Homosexuality is so much in fashion, it no longer makes news." His conquests included a stunning array of Hollywood luminaries: Rita Moreno, with whom he had a tumultuous 8-year affair, Marilyn Monroe, Grace Kelly, Ursula Andress, and even, according to some accounts, James Dean. Rita Moreno perhaps best captured the Brando experience in her memoir. "He was the daddy that I couldn't please. I was slim, I was pretty, I was desirable for him, and my heart was completely and utterly broken because he would disappear for weeks and not call." Unlike some of his contemporaries, Brando didn't approach womanizing as sport or conquest. There was an almost childlike quality to his approach to relationships, a need for immediate gratification combined with an inability to commit. As he once said, "I have eyes like I've never had in my life. I see everything, even things I don't want to see." Brando left behind a complicated legacy of broken relationships, acknowledged and unacknowledged children, and former lovers who, despite everything, still spoke of him with a mixture of exasperation and enduring affection. In love, as in his acting, Marlon Brando was utterly authentic and utterly unpredictable.
I was terribly impressed with Mr. Churchill when he said, "My lords."
7. Charlie Chaplin. Behind the iconic Little Tramp character was a man whose personal life generated almost as much controversy as his groundbreaking films. Charlie Chaplin's romantic history reveals a complex, often troubling pattern that was shocking even by Hollywood's permissive standards. Chaplin was married 4 times, but it was the pattern of his marriages that raised eyebrows. His first wife, Mildred Harris, was just 16 when they married in 1918. His second wife, Leda Gray, was also 16 when they wed in 1924 after she became pregnant during the filming of The Gold Rush. After divorcing Gray, Chaplin married actress Paulette Goddard in 1936, his only wife close to his age. Finally, in 1943, he married 18-year-old Una O'Neill, daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill, when he was 54. Remarkably, this last marriage lasted until his death in 1977. Between and during these marriages, Chaplin's pursuit of young actresses was relentless. As the head of his own studio, he had unprecedented power over the careers of aspiring starlets, power that he frequently used to his advantage. His most notorious scandal involved actress Joan Barry, with whom he had an affair that ended badly. In 1943, Barry filed a paternity suit claiming Chaplin was the father of her child. Despite blood tests proving he was not the father, the first such tests ever admitted in California court, the jury ruled against Chaplin, requiring him to pay child support. The Barry case, combined with Chaplin's leftist political leanings, contributed to his eventual expulsion from the United States during the McCarthy era. When he left America in 1952 to promote a film in London, the Attorney General revoked his re-entry permit. What makes Chaplin's case particularly complicated is the contrast between his humanitarian screen persona and his personal behavior. The Little Tramp stood up for the underprivileged, yet Chaplin himself often exploited power imbalances in his relationships with women. Leda Gray's divorce complaint, which became public despite the studio's efforts to suppress it, painted a damning picture of Chaplin's behavior, describing in detail his demands and treatment of her. The ensuing settlement of $825,000 was the largest in American history at that time. Yet for all his controversial behavior, Chaplin's final marriage to Una O'Neill was by all accounts genuinely happy. They had 8 children together, and she remained devoted to him until his death, suggesting that the great artist finally found the stability that had eluded him for decades.
Today's newspaper and photographers that
6. Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes defies easy categorization. Aviator, film producer, business tycoon, and one of Hollywood's most systematic pursuers of beautiful women. What sets Hughes apart from other Golden Age womanizers was his approach. Calculating, controlling, and often disturbing in its methodical nature. As the owner of RKO Pictures, Hughes had unprecedented power over actresses' careers, power he leveraged repeatedly to fulfill his romantic agenda. He would often discover young actresses, sign them to personal contracts, set them up in apartments he controlled, and essentially keep them on call for his attention. The list of Hughes' conquests reads like a who's who of Golden Age Hollywood. Katharine Hepburn, with whom he had a 3-year relationship, Ava Gardner, Bette Davis, Ginger Rogers, Gene Tierney, and dozens more. His pursuit of young actresses became so notorious that parents of aspiring starlets would warn their daughters about him. Hughes's approach to relationships was clinical, almost industrial. He had a team of staff members whose sole job was to find attractive women and arrange meetings. According to Hughes's personal pilot, Ron Kistler, it was like a conveyor belt. One would arrive and another would leave. His relationships followed a pattern. Initial lavish attention, then increasing control, followed by neglect when a new interest appeared. Katharine Hepburn described life with Hughes. He was the most fascinating person I've ever known, but eventually I found I was just another acquisition, like his planes. As Hughes aged and his mental health deteriorated, he suffered from severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. His behavior toward women became increasingly erratic. He would watch the same movies repeatedly, fixating on actresses like Jane Russell, for whom he designed a special bra for her role in The Outlaw. What made Hughes particularly notorious wasn't just the number of his relationships, but their transactional nature. Many women reported feeling like possessions rather than partners. Yet his wealth, power, and undeniable charisma continued to attract Hollywood's most beautiful women well into his later years. When Hughes died in 1976, he left behind not just a business empire, but a legacy of manipulation and control that represented the darkest side of Hollywood's power dynamics. A cautionary tale of what happens when unlimited resources meet unchecked obsession.
I am.
Well, the picnic basket's in the trunk.
5. Cary Grant. With his immaculate style and sophisticated charm, Cary Grant personified Hollywood elegance. While his on-screen persona suggested a man of perfect refinement, his off-screen romantic life revealed a complex, restless search for connection that led him through 5 marriages and numerous high-profile affairs. Born Archibald Leach in working-class Bristol, England, Grant reinvented himself completely for Hollywood. This transformation extended to his personal life, where he cultivated relationships with some of the most glamorous women of his era. His marriages to actresses Virginia Cherrill, Barbara Hutton, one of the wealthiest women in the world, Betsy Drake, Diane Cannon, and finally Barbara Harris, followed a pattern. Each began with genuine passion and ended when Grant, perpetually dissatisfied, moved on to a new relationship. Between marriages, Grant's romantic life was equally eventful. His affair with Sophia Loren during the filming of The Pride and the Passion was particularly intense. Despite being married to Betsy Drake at the time, Grant became obsessed with Loren, bombarding her with flowers, love letters, and marriage proposals. Loren ultimately chose Carlo Ponti over Grant, leaving the star devastated. Other notable relationships included a romance with actress Maureen O'Sullivan and, most famously, a complex friendship with fellow star Randolph Scott, with whom he shared a home for 12 years. This relationship has been the subject of much speculation about Grant's sexuality, with many historians now believing Grant was bisexual, an orientation that had to remain completely hidden during Hollywood's golden age. What distinguished Grant from other womanizers of his era was his perpetual search for perfection. As his ex-wife Diane Cannon later wrote, he was looking for something in his women that he couldn't find in himself, a sense of completion. This quest for completion led to a pattern of controlling behavior in his relationships. He insisted that his wives conform to his exacting standards, from how they dressed to how they spoke. Betsy Drake recalled, "He was trying to recreate me in his image." Yet despite these difficulties, most of Grant's ex-wives and lovers maintained affection for him. There was something vulnerable beneath the perfect exterior that inspired loyalty even after relationships ended. In his final marriage to Barbara Harris, a woman 47 years his junior, Grant seemed to find a measure of peace. They remained together until his death in 1986, with Harris later saying he was finally ready to be happy. Cary Grant's romantic history reveals the complexity behind Hollywood's most perfect leading man, a self-made icon whose search for love was inextricably tied to his search for identity. As he once admitted, "I pretended to be somebody I wanted to be until finally I became that person, or he became me."
Fox was working next door. The garbage dealer, the junk man, he said to me, "Hey, baby, you want to go to Plains next Sunday with me to church?"
4. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra didn't just sing about love. He pursued it with the same intensity that made him a legendary performer. His romantic life was operatic in its emotional range, from obsessive passion to volcanic rage, conducted in the full glare of public attention despite his famous insistence on privacy. Married 4 times, to Nancy Barbado, Ava Gardner, Mia Farrow, and Barbara Marx, Sinatra's marriages captured different phases of his tumultuous life, but it was his countless affairs and relationships between these marriages that cemented his reputation as one of Hollywood's greatest Lotharios. The list of women linked to Sinatra reads like a catalog of 20th century beauty: Marilyn Monroe, Angie Dickinson, Natalie Wood, Judy Garland, Lauren Bacall, with whom he was briefly engaged, Lana Turner, and many more. As his friend and fellow Rat Pack member Dean Martin once quipped, "It's Frank's world, we just live in it." What set Sinatra apart from other womanizers was the intensity of his attachments. These weren't casual flings, but consuming passions. His relationship with Ava Gardner was particularly legendary, a volatile combination of attraction and conflict that seemed to fuel both their creative work. When their relationship crumbled, Sinatra was so devastated that he reportedly attempted suicide multiple times. Juliet Prowse, who had a relationship with Sinatra in the early 1960s, later explained his appeal. "Frank is like a 220-volt electric outlet. Most people are 110. When you're around him, you're fully alive." Sinatra's approach to romance was inextricably linked to his self-image as the quintessential man's man. Raised in Hoboken, New Jersey, in a tough Italian-American community, he carried that neighborhood's codes of masculinity throughout his life. Women were to be pursued, protected, and ultimately possessed, a view that led to both grand romantic gestures and troubling displays of jealousy. His relationship with 19-year-old Mia Farrow when he was 50 captured the public's imagination and drew criticism for the age gap. When asked about the difference in their ages, Sinatra reportedly responded, "I've got scotch older than her." Despite his reputation as a womanizer, many of Sinatra's former lovers spoke of his generosity and attentiveness. He was known for lavish gifts, surprising women with jewelry or cars, and using his considerable influence to help their careers. As actress Angie Dickinson later said, "When Frank loved you, you were the center of the universe." In his final years, Sinatra found stability with Barbara Marx, whom he married in 1976. She remained with him until his death in 1998, providing a peaceful conclusion to what had been an extraordinarily turbulent romantic history. Frank Sinatra's relationships, like his music, were characterized by raw emotion and total commitment. As he sang in All or Nothing at All, halfway measures simply wouldn't do. In love, as in everything else, Sinatra lived life on his own uncompromising terms.
How he controls it.
Controls it? I don't understand it. Has he got you hypnotized or something?
I don't know. You don't understand power.
3. Mickey Rooney. Don't let his diminutive stature fool you. At 5 feet 2 inches, Mickey Rooney was a giant in the realm of Hollywood romance. With 8 marriages and countless affairs, Rooney's romantic resume rivals any in cinema history, especially considering he began as a child star in the wholesome Andy Hardy films. Rooney's marriages read like a timeline of his career. First to the sultry Ava Gardner in 1942, when he was MGM's biggest star, then to beauty queen B.J. Baker, followed by actress Martha Vickers, model Elaine Mankin, actress Barbara Ann Thomason, secretary Marge Lane, secretary Caroline Hockett, and finally, singer Jan Chamberlain, to whom he remained married for 35 years, until they separated shortly before his death. What makes Rooney's case particularly fascinating is the stark contrast between his on-screen persona and his private life. To millions of moviegoers in the 1930s and 40s, he was the all-American boy next door, the wholesome Andy Hardy who always learned the right moral lessons. Off-screen, he was an insatiable pursuer of women, with a particular fondness for beauty queens, showgirls, and actresses. His first marriage to Ava Gardner was particularly ill-fated. Gardner later described Rooney as a serial cheater, writing in her autobiography that she would receive calls from women he was seeing on the side. "I was shocked," she wrote. "I just didn't know how to handle it." Tragedy touched Rooney's romantic life in 1966, when his 5th wife, Barbara Ann Thomason, was killed by her lover, actor Milos Milosevic, in a murder-suicide at Rooney's home while the actor was away filming. The scandal dominated headlines for weeks. Rooney had a remarkable ability to bounce back from romantic disaster. "Always get married in the morning," he once quipped. "That way, if it doesn't work out, you haven't wasted a whole day." This resilience kept him constantly in search of the next relationship, the next chance at happiness. What drove Rooney's perpetual romantic quests? Friends suggested it was a combination of factors: the unnatural isolation of child stardom, his early exposure to Hollywood's adult world, and perhaps most significantly, his need for constant validation and companionship. As Rooney himself explained later in life, "I was a 14-year-old boy with the emotions of a 14-year-old boy, but with money and access. It was a bad combination." Despite the chaos of his romantic life, Rooney maintained a successful career spanning 9 decades, from silent films to the 21st century. And in his final marriage to Jan Chamberlain, he seemed to find a measure of the stability that had eluded him for most of his life. Mickey Rooney's romantic history remains one of Hollywood's most extreme examples of the gap between public image and private reality. A reminder that behind even the most wholesome facades often lie complicated, all-too-human desires.
I'd like to extend my apology for my conduct of last night.
Oh, but Red...
2. Clark Gable. They didn't call him the King for nothing. Clark Gable ruled Hollywood not just through his commanding screen presence, but through a romantic history that included 5 marriages and affairs with nearly every leading lady he worked with. With his trademark smirk and those famous ears, Gable wasn't conventionally handsome, but he possessed something more powerful: raw masculine charisma that few women could resist. Gable's marriages traced his rise from struggling actor to Hollywood royalty. His first wife, Josephine Dillon, was 17 years his senior and worked as his acting coach and financial supporter. His second, Maria Langham, was also older and wealthy. By his third marriage to Carole Lombard, the great love of his life, Gable had become the biggest star in Hollywood. After Lombard's tragic death in a 1942 plane crash, he later married Lady Sylvia Ashley and finally Kay Spreckles. Between and during these marriages, Gable's list of affairs included a virtual who's who of Golden Age actresses. His relationship with Joan Crawford was particularly enduring, spanning decades and multiple films. "We had a passionate, electric chemistry," Crawford later recalled. "It was the real thing." But Gable's most consequential affair was with Loretta Young during the filming of The Call of the Wild in 1935. Young became pregnant, and in an elaborate deception orchestrated by the studios, she went into hiding, gave birth secretly, and then later adopted her own daughter. This shocking story remained Hollywood's best-kept secret for decades, only becoming public knowledge after both Gable and Young had died. What distinguished Gable from other womanizers was his genuine enjoyment of women's company beyond the physical aspect. He actually liked women, Ava Gardner once observed, not just sleeping with them, but talking to them, hearing what they thought. This quality made him not just a seducer, but a companion women genuinely enjoyed being around. After the death of Carole Lombard, something changed in Gable. Friends noted that a part of him never recovered from losing the one woman who had treated him as Clark, rather than the King. His subsequent romantic history had a different quality, more searching, less triumphant. Gable's approach to romance was summed up in his most famous role as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, when he tells Scarlett O'Hara, "You should be kissed, and often, and by someone who knows how." For dozens of Hollywood's most beautiful women, Gable was decidedly someone who knew how. When he died in 1960, shortly after completing The Misfits, he left behind a romantic legacy almost as influential as his acting one. Generations of men would attempt to emulate his confident masculinity, his unapologetic pursuit of pleasure, and that famous smirk that suggested he knew exactly what women wanted and how to give it to them.
Errol, the last picture in which we saw you with The Sun Also Rises, and even critics who had not liked you before said that you were wonderful.
1. Errol Flynn. At the top of our countdown stands the man whose very name became synonymous with seduction. Long before Netflix and chill, there was "in like Flynn," a phrase inspired by Errol Flynn's legendary success with women. If Hollywood had a Casanova, it was undoubtedly this swashbuckling Australian, whose off-screen adventures made his on-screen heroics seem tame by comparison. Flynn's reputation wasn't just Hollywood hype. It was earned through a lifetime dedicated to romantic conquest. Despite 3 marriages, to actress Lily Demita, Nora Eddington, and Patrice Wymore, Flynn's true relationship was with seduction itself. For him, the chase was everything. The stage for Flynn's extraordinary romantic career was his equally extraordinary lifestyle. He lived on a massive yacht called the Zaka, which served as both transportation and seduction venue. The boat was infamous for its wild parties and secret compartment, allegedly designed so Flynn could spy on his female guests. As he once boasted, "I like my whiskey old and my women young." Flynn's conquests included some of the most beautiful women in Hollywood: Marlene Dietrich, Lupe Velez, Hedy Lamarr, and countless others whose names never made it to the gossip columns. His pursuit was indiscriminate: actresses, fans, society women, and everything in between. What made Flynn unique among Hollywood womanizers was his unabashed enjoyment of his own reputation. While others might have tried to maintain a respectable public image, Flynn reveled in his notoriety. "I like my life," he once said. "It is the only one I have." This embrace of hedonism came at a cost. In 1942, at the height of his fame, Flynn was charged with the statutory rape of 2 teenage girls. Although he was acquitted after a sensational trial, the case damaged his reputation and added a disturbing dimension to his womanizing image. The phrase, "in like Flynn," took on a darker connotation. Yet even legal troubles couldn't slow Flynn's romantic pursuits. In his autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, he detailed his adventures with unapologetic enthusiasm. The book, published posthumously, became a bestseller precisely because readers wanted a glimpse into the life of Hollywood's greatest lover. As Flynn aged, his lifestyle took its toll. Years of heavy drinking and drug use aged him prematurely. By his death at age 50 in 1959, he looked decades older. Yet even in decline, the Flynn charm remained potent. His final girlfriend, Beverly Adland, was just 17 when the 48-year-old Flynn began their relationship, a final controversy in a life full of them. What makes Flynn's story so emblematic of Golden Age Hollywood is how completely his private life overshadowed his considerable talents as an actor. In films like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood, he displayed genuine charisma and athleticism. Yet today, he's remembered less for these performances than for the phrase his lifestyle inspired. Errol Flynn lived and loved with a recklessness that both defined and ultimately destroyed him. As he himself once wrote, "I've had a hell of a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed every minute of it." For Hollywood's greatest womanizer, that seems like an appropriate epitaph.